I'm driving home with my grandson after school when he slumps into the seat beside me. No tears, no anger, just this quiet heaviness, like the volume on his world got turned down. He's 16. I ask how his day went and he says, "Fine," the way kids do when it is. I ask if anything happened. He shakes his head. We ride in silence for a bit and then he asks a question that stays with you. He says, "Grandpa, do you ever feel like nothing you do really matters?" My name is Henry and I'm 86 years old. I've watched empires rise and fall, buried friends, lost money, rebuilt, failed again. Hearing that question from him hit differently. I've asked it myself, more times than I'd admit. The difference is, I'm near the end looking back and he's just starting out looking ahead. Somewhere between those two views, I think I finally learned something worth sharing before time runs out completely. We live in a time that's obsessed with being noticed. Everyone wants proof that they mattered, that they left something behind. I see it all around me. People chasing titles, followers, numbers, applause. They want their work to go viral, their opinions to be heard, their names to last longer than they do. And I understand that pull. I've felt it too. But after more than 8 decades of living, here's what I've learned the hard way. The moments that truly matter almost never feel important when they're happening. Let me tell you about a man named Walter. He lived across the street from us for over 30 years. Quiet fellow, worked maintenance at the local hospital. Same route every morning, same lunch pail, same worn jacket in the winter. He never talked about his job much. If you asked him how work was, he'd just shrug and say, "It's fine." When he retired, there wasn't a party, no big send-off, just a handshake from his supervisor and a sheet cake in the break room. Walter went home that afternoon like it was any other day. A few years later, Walter got sick. Word spread faster than I expected. When his service was held, I walked into that chapel and had to stand in the back. Nurses, doctors, janitors, patients' families. One by one they stood and spoke. A nurse said Walter was the only person who noticed when she cried during her first week on the job. A surgeon said Walter fixed equipment late at night so surgeries wouldn't be delayed. A man in a wheelchair said Walter used to sneak him extra blankets and stay until he fell asleep. Walter thought he was invisible. He was. He just never saw the reach of his own hands. That's the part we miss. We think meaning comes from scale, from how many people we touch, but life doesn't work that way. It works in inches, not miles. It's built from moments that don't announce themselves. A pause, a choice. A presence when it would have been easier to disappear. When I was in my early 40s, I was coming apart quietly. I smiled in public, paid my bills late, and pretended everything was under control. It was. My marriage was strained. My job felt hollow. I was tired in a way sleep didn't fix. One afternoon, I sat on a park bench longer than I meant to, staring at nothing in particular. An older woman named Ruth sat beside me. I'd seen her there before feeding birds. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "Hard day." I nodded. We sat in silence. After a while she said, "You don't have to carry everything at once." Then she stood up and left. That was it. No advice, no follow-up, but something loosened inside me. I carried that sentence for years. Ruth probably forgot me before dinner. That's how most meaning works. Quiet, unrecorded, no witnesses. We expect mattering to feel dramatic, like a before and after moment, but most of the time it feels like nothing at all. My sister Clara used to bake bread every Sunday. Same recipe, same rhythm. She'd bring loaves to neighbors, leave them on doorsteps without knocking. I teased her once, asked what the point was. "People are hungry," she said. Years later, after she was gone, I ran into a man who told me those loaves were the only warm meals his family had during a hard winter. Clara never knew. She never asked. We think we need recognition to confirm our worth, but worth doesn't need witnesses. It exists whether anyone claps or not. Here's the lie we're sold: that ordinary is the enemy, that a quiet life is a wasted one, that if you aren't exceptional, you're forgettable. But ordinary is where almost everything good lives. In routine, in consistency, in the small decision to care when no one's looking. I've met people who saved lives and never spoke about it. And I've met people who spoke loudly and never helped anyone at all. The difference isn't talent or luck. It's attention. It's choosing to see the person in front of you instead of the audience you wish you had. If you want to know whether you matter, don't look at your achievements, look at your interruptions. The times you stopped what you were doing because someone else needed you. That's where meaning hides. As I've gotten older, I've noticed something else. The things we chase tend to shrink with time, but the things we gave ourselves to grow larger. Titles fade, possessions break, accomplishments blur together, but kindness stays sharp, presence stays warm. People remember how you treated them long after they forget what you did. My grandson Leo was afraid of the dark when he was little, wouldn't sleep alone. Every night he'd call out. I'd sit on the edge of his bed and wait until his breathing slowed. I didn't tell him there was nothing to fear. I didn't rush him, I just stayed. After a while, he didn't need me anymore. He doesn't remember those nights. I do, because that was my work then, and it mattered. We don't talk enough about staying, about choosing to remain when it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, unrewarded. Leaving is easy. Staying costs something. But that cost is where meaning takes root. There was a cashier at a hardware store I used to visit every week. Her name was Alina, always polite, always tired. One day she looked worse than usual. I asked if she was all right. She hesitated, then said her husband had been laid off. They were scared. I didn't have advice. I didn't have money to offer. I just listened. The next week she smiled differently. Years later she told me that moment helped her breathe again. I had forgotten it entirely. That's the trouble with mattering. You rarely get confirmation. No receipt. No proof. You just have to trust that showing up counts, even when nothing comes back to you. We ask the wrong question. We ask, do I matter? When we should ask, who am I showing up for? Meaning isn't a spotlight, it's a connection. It's knowing your absence would be felt by someone specific. I've buried friends who thought they failed at life. And at their funerals, the room told a different story. Lives woven quietly into other lives. Threads holding things together without ever being seen. If I could go back, I wouldn't try harder to impress. I'd try harder to notice, to listen without fixing, to sit without rushing, to care without keeping score. The world doesn't fall apart because there aren't enough stars. It falls apart when there aren't enough steady hands, people willing to do the unremarkable work of being decent. You don't need to be remembered by thousands. You need to be missed by a few. That's the kind of mattering that lasts. If this meant something to you, consider passing it along to someone who might need it today. Leave a comment and tell me one small way you plan to show up more fully this week. And if you'd like to keep having these quiet conversations together, you can subscribe. I'm not finished sharing yet. There are still a few things I've learned that feel worth saying to people who are willing to pause and listen.